listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. What? Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake. Lineage go back to US Southern plantations. Lineage, Jim Crow and mass incarceration. Redlining lynchings, we are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG the wise one, cousin mother intellectual. Samantha bringing fire, anti-black, we pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. The backbone of the country to win. You need our energy. You gon' see. Listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake.
So we're coming to you today. We, like the rest of the country, have been, experiencing a moment of protest and crisis, still reverberating out from the murder of George List. It is a book called White Fragility by an author called Robin Diangalo. And, I thought, hey, I'm white, I'm fragile. It's,
I'm a small
maybe
bean.
we should check this out.
I'm a small, soft,
I'm a
fragile
small
bean.
bean. Yeah.
White Fragility was the working title of our book.
I'll just say, to join us to discuss white fragility and what to do, how to talk, how to think, we're joined by our friend Jen Pan, who you may remember from the Joker episode, which was, let's be honest, a film about white fragility. And
White male rage, as SNL put it.
And, of course, back from his sojourn among the Philistines, it is our colleague Virgil Texas.
Thanks for having me.
And me as well.
So we all read like a chunk of this book. I did the beginning, but before we get into what's in the book, what do we make overall about this this concept of not just white fragility, but this moment of these sort of prescriptions for how to be a white ally, how to think and how to talk about these things, and this whole slate of, like you said, homework that's been assigned to the country.
Well, Robin, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about your book, White Fragility, and your work. To start off with, do you mind just telling us a little bit about what first got you interested in anti-racism work?
I kind of fell into it. I was your classic white liberal. I was late to college. I grew up poor and I didn't go to college till much later in life, and I graduated with a degree in sociology and had no idea what I could do for a living. And I applied for a job as a diversity trainer, and I thought two things that'll show how naive I was. One, that sounds so fun. And two, of course I'm qualified. I'm a vegetarian. How could I be racist? Mm-hmm. And so I got the job, and I was in for the most profound learning of my life on two kind of parallel tracks. And the first one was that I was working side by side with people of color who were challenging the way I saw the world and my place in it. And part of being white is I could be that far in life and never have had my worldview challenged, my racial worldview. I wouldn't even been able to tell you I had a racial worldview, right? I was just a person. And certainly I had never had it challenged in a sustained way by people of color. And so I was like a fish being taken out of water. And then the second part of that process was going into the workplace, which was overwhelmingly white, and facilitating side by side with a person of color these mandated diversity trainings. And the hostility was jaw-dropping. The meanness, the anger, the defensiveness. But the patterns were so consistent, and I had some really patient and brilliant mentorship from the people of color I was working with. And over time, I just got better and better at not only understanding how we pull this off, this claim that race has no meaning in our lives, even as we live profoundly separate and unequal lives, but also really good at articulating that to other white people. And so I went on to get my PhD. But I certainly wasn't born and certainly wasn't educated in the mainstream system to see any of this.
So, for my part, the context in which I encountered white fragility is a few months ago, I was assigned to review it for the New Republic in sort of the broader context of the diversity industry, which, you guys are probably aware is this like
right, Sam,
massive, bloated $8 billion industry, which sort of encompasses like
This is one of my biggest beefs with this whole white fragility jihad that the lefties went on when this happened. We'll go more into what I believe the roots of it are later. But when did lefties start caring about how rich corporations spend their money? When did that matter to them? This is that whole angle is stupid to me. It's absolutely stupid. But they'll at the same time they'll quickly say police need more training. But you mad at corporations spending money on this stuff? All right, that was just a foul angle to me. It was just again another excuse just to keep white folks from getting in their feelings. Anybody got anything on that?
Nah,
all right,
sounds good to me.
All right, let's ride.
trainings, sensitivity workshops, like cultural competency, implicit bias training. And that is, incidentally, the industry in which this author of White Fragility, Robin Diangalo, works, right? And so I think that, a kind of interesting component to the conversation is the fact that there's kind of been this, emerging body of literature that talks about how these diversity trainings don't work. They don't reduce people's biases. They don't really make workplaces more diverse. And in some weird cases, they even make people's biases stronger. So I think that's kind of important to keep in mind when you are thinking about, Robin Diangalo and White Fragility and how her book is basically a documentation of how these trainings don't work, right?
All right. Hey, hold on, stop.
She is a diversity trainer, right? And her case studies in this book.
So all this stuff backfiring is actually proof that she's correct, right? The fact that talking about these issues makes people angry and makes them and create some sort of backlash. I haven't seen the evidence of it. I'll look that up at a later date. But that's just proof of white fragility. That means it's even more important that we tackle it. Okay. Anybody got anybody else got anything? I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, basically how they're talking about her whole book is basically talking about how this training doesn't work. But the whole book is her using as a case study to show that, you guys do have biases and you get triggered. You get triggered when we try to have these conversations with you. Again, I'll let him talk more, but I find it funny because I had been following Robin DiAngelo's lectures before her book came out. So I literally bought her book as soon as it dropped. So I find it hilarious because I actually liked the book. And the book actually gave me more empathy for white people. And it's funny. That white people are having such a visceral reaction to it. But I'm like, she's right. So Black people who read the book say she's right. And all you white people are saying she's wrong.
And all you and white adjacent people, yeah. Yep. John.
All right.
Oh yeah, man. Y'all
Thanks,
right.
man.
Yeah, for sure, Sam. But yeah, y'all both right, man. Just prove how fragile it is. And we know, once they get farther into this segment, they're gonna start talking about what it's really about. It's about Black and white racism. You know what I mean? That's why that PLC shit is bullshit. But and they're gonna get into what I always say when they get down to some real specific shit about Black people and have white people, we call white people out on their shit. It's a neoliberal conspiracy. But It's a liberal conspiracy to talk about racism. So
Yeah,
all right,
everything's
we got
conspiracy. Yeah, absolutely.
the neo-libs. Ooh.
Mud, what you got? Nice shot.
It's shocking that, you know, we've had this racism problem for 400 years, but, you know, they have an expectation that this woman is going to solve all of it within the training. Like, she's going to fix American society within the training. No, she's diagnosing the problem and just pointing it out to like make people aware. Like that's
Yeah,
the whole point.
absolutely the whole point. Which ironically, these white folks responding to a book called White Fragility with white fragility. The irony is
Fragile than the
not
motherfucker.
lost on me.
Fragile as hell.
Why is it so hard for white people to see racism in themselves and other good white people?
You know, it's not one single thread. That's the way I think about it. It's a series of threads that come together to create a kind of irrational stew just below the surface, right? It doesn't take much for that to erupt. So probably a really foundational one is what I think of as the good-bad binary. We're taught to think about a racist as an individual who consciously does not like somebody based on race and intentionally seeks to be mean to them. Individual, conscious malintent. If that's my definition of a racist and what it takes to be racist, and you say, you know, intended or not, what you just said was racially problematic, what I'm going to hear is that you're saying I'm intentionally mean, you know, and intended to cause harm. And now I'm going to need to defend my moral character. And when you change the question, you change the possible responses or solutions, right? So that changes the question from, is this or isn't this racist, which is what dominant culture always asks. Was he or wasn't he a racist? You know, and then, you know, debate ensues. It changes the question from if to how. And it's incredibly liberating to change the question, because now I can just stop defending and denying and deflecting and explaining away and just get to work trying to figure out, okay, well, how was I shaped by this system? I was. How was I? How can I use all the things that I see as unique and special about me and apply them to figuring out how I got set up and then what I might do to interrupt that? And that leads to another key reason it's so hard to talk to white people, and that is the precious ideology of individualism. It's really precious. And we are reinforced in this idea that we're each unique and different. And yes, we are individuals. We are also members of a social group. You know, I often tell white people, you're going to be fine. Suspend your uniqueness for just a minute. You'll be fine. It's well protected out there in daily life. And just move over here and grapple with what it means to be a member of this group. When it comes to race, we just want to insist that it has no meaning. You really cannot grow up or spend any significant time in this culture and not internalize an understanding that it's better to be white. The research shows that children, by 3 to 4, all children understand it's better to be white. There's a sense of entitlement to what we have, right? The ideology of meritocracy that says, you know, whatever I have is purely from my efforts, right? And I want to be really clear. I'm not saying white people don't struggle, don't face barriers, don't suffer. But we don't struggle, suffer, and face that barrier. And it's huge. It's a huge barrier. And not facing it, of course, impacts the outcome of my efforts and my work.
All right, Sam, go ahead. Sorry, folks.
Book is she goes around to people's workplaces and to their schools and talks to them about racism. And her whole thesis is that white people in the room become extremely uncomfortable. They don't like what they're hearing, and they don't react well to her. So maybe that's, you know, a way to kind of kick off like what it is that she's getting at.
I think too, one of the things that like kept jumping out at me when I was reading this is that she kept saying like, I cannot correct or deprogram my unconscious bias and feelings of racial superiority. I will always be like this. I will always, walk around with, latent white supremacy. And I'm like, then why am I listening to you? Like, why are you the anti-racist trainer?
Because you have to acknowledge the fact that you have racism in you for you to check it. If you don't see the microaggressions and the things that you do as being racist, how can you fix it? All the woman is saying is, due to how she was raised and how she moves through this world as a white woman, that she has to check herself to make sure that she doesn't do or say things that are racist. Y'all people do this all the time. We work with y'all. Y'all don't even understand the things that y'all say and do in the workplace that is uncomfortable and creates a hostile work environment for Black people.
And the science is clear. The science on bias has been clear for decades. And to think that suddenly this book is the problem, as if her calling out a problem is the problem. This is much like the Ann Coulter. That was her thing. People calling out racism are racist, right? You're the one talking about race, therefore you're the racist. This is the lefty version of that, right? So I mean, this is just the left and the right ganging up against us, which is pretty standard. America. Yeah. Mud, what you got, baby?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, they're acting like this bias thing is just some shit that we're pushing on the white people. No, we have this shit too.
Yeah,
like, Black people
absolutely.
have internalized this shit too because of the way this society is designed to brainwash all of us with white supremacy. Like this has been an issue that has been studied, like you said. So they're just full of shit.
Facts, absolutely facts. So yeah, I'm sorry. Anybody else got anything? I'm sorry, I lost track of everything. We good?
It's like, look, I know about racism. Take it from me, a racist. She doesn't do a very good job at justifying her anti-racist credentials, except that she can charge people $10,000 a speaking session for it. I mean, like for like a 2-hour, like it's better than podcast.
But the gag is they never mention that Robin DiAngelo takes her white woman self and her white privilege into these white corporations and demands that money and splits it with Negroes that she works with. Okay? So how many of you white podcasters are marching Black people in and getting them a check? Because she's splitting her checks with Black people. It's not like she got an all-white staff.
Thanks for being here. I'm very excited about this conversation. Actually, when they asked me to do this, I was like, I think I was writing a story about the 911 calls that we keep hearing people talk about. So I will have a question about that a little bit later. But before we get started, I wanted Robin and Aaron to talk a little bit about their background so you can sort of understand the weight and gravity and authority they have on this topic.
Well, my academic background was red. I have resigned from my tenured position to full-time write and speak and educate on issues of racial justice with a particular focus on white identity. And I've been doing this for about 20 years, day in and day out, talking to primarily white audiences about what it means to be white, hence the book, White Fragility, Why It's So Hard to Talk to White People About Racism.
And I'm a coach and a trainer and consultant, and I work with mostly organizations that are committed to equity in education and in the nonprofit sector. And I've been working in the nonprofit sector for about 15 years, specifically working in education and community development. And while I've mostly worked in communities of color, working hand in hand with communities of color and supporting the leadership of communities of color. In all of those organizations, white people and white fragility has been the greatest challenge in getting to the outcomes that we want to see in those communities. So that has driven me to the work that I do with organizations and with individual leaders today.
And Aaron and I work side by side often.
Okay. So how many people have read the book already? Yeah? Okay, so that's good because I want to start by allowing Robin to give an actual definition of what white fragility is.
And I thought I'll just read it because I spent a lot of time getting as clear as I could. White people in North America live in a society that is deeply separate and unequal by race, and white people are the beneficiaries of that separation and inequality. As a result, we are insulated from racial stress at the same time that we come to feel entitled to and deserving of our advantage. Given how seldom we experience racial discomfort in a society we dominate, we haven't had to build our racial stamina. Socialized into a deeply internalized sense of superiority that we either are unaware of or can never admit to ourselves, we become highly fragile in conversations about race. We consider a challenge to our racial worldviews as a challenge to our very identities as good, moral people. Thus, we perceive any attempt to connect us to the system of racism as an unsettling and unfair moral offense. The smallest amount of racial stress is intolerable. The mere suggestion that being white has meaning often triggers a range of defensive responses. These include emotions such as anger, fear, and guilt, and behaviors such as argumentation, silence, and withdrawal from the stress-inducing situation. These responses work to reinstate white equilibrium as they repel the challenge, return our racial comfort, and maintain our dominance within the racial hierarchy. I conceptualize this process as white fragility. And though white fragility is triggered by discomfort and anxiety, it is born of superiority and entitlement. White fragility is not weakness per se. In fact, it is a powerful means of white racial control and the protection of white advantage.
Now, when you give that definition in a workshop, why do some people become defensive? Why is there a knee-jerk reaction to sort of defend themselves?
For several reasons. One, we come to feel entitled to comfort, right? As a white person, I am rarely outside of my racial comfort zone. And most of my life, I've been warned not to go outside of my racial comfort zone. I'm centered, I'm affirmed, I'm validated. I see my image everywhere, including God, Jesus, and Mary, right? At the same time, I've been taught that to be racist is to be intentionally mean. And so if you suggest that I've done or said anything racially problematic, not only are you triggering my kind of entitlement to my position, but you're suggesting I'm not a good person. That's how I hear it anyway. And so I'm going to lash back to repel that suggestion.
Aaron, what's it like when you are giving this definition? Is there a different reaction than maybe what Robin would see?
Well, I have to take about 2 days of leading up to the definition, right? Of warming up, of building a sense of connection, of over-smiling, right? And doing all of the work to ease the tension, right? I'm shape-shifting. I'm contorting myself as a person of color. And because I've learned this is how people of color survive white fragility every day. I have heightened skills. They don't always serve me, but I have heightened skills in how to shift myself. And even when I do so, and I present the same data, the same information that Robin does, I'm immediately challenged. And even when you present the definition, the cognitive dissonance that shows up for white people in hearing a reflection of their behavior in the moment actually causes them to act out from that behavior even more. So I'm mindful of it happening in the moment. And so it's incredibly challenging.
And I just want to add, because I realize your question was like, how do they respond? And I want to acknowledge that as an insider to whiteness, there is an understanding I wasn't raised to have an understanding of it, but I've worked really hard to understand it. But I think people of color understand what it means to be white at a very deep level that I'll never understand. And that people of color have been saying this for a very long time, and I couldn't articulate half of what I can today without the brilliant mentorship of people of color. But one of the ways this works is that my voice is granted more legitimacy. And it's not as if, it's received really openly, but I can get much further when I say it than when Aaron says it, yeah.
Yeah, and this is akin to that, calling everybody you disagree with is a grifter. Everybody you disagree with who's making money is a grifter. right? She's in a corporate space. Why do you care how much corporations are paying this woman, right? Like I was saying before, why do you care why do you suddenly care how this woman makes her money, right? Is it what she's saying that bothers you, or what she's saying about you that bothers you, or the fact that she's making money, or the fact that she's right and people are listening? Which one bothers you more? And we have to, and I was going to tackle this later, but I'm going to tackle it now because I'm an asshole. All this happened at the same time reparations was getting traction, right? People were realizing after George Floyd, people were realizing, okay, here we are again. Nothing is getting better. That happened under Obama. We're under Trump now. No matter what happens, it seems like nothing's getting better for Black people. We have to reflect. That's why this book was selling so well. People wanted to self-reflect, and that's the only way to get rid of racism, right? Is people self-reflecting, because culture will keep pushing it on you every day. So you've got to self-reflect. There's no other way to beat it, right? Now, if people have power, you can keep people from acting on that racism, right? The racism that's getting pushed in them all the time, right? You can de-incentivize actions taken based on race, right? But to get rid of racism, individuals have to self-reflect, especially individuals in power, like in corporations, because that's where all the power is in this country, in corporations. So just tossing that out there is a logical point. Anybody got anything on that?
Yeah, I think you're right, man. I think you're right. I think it's funny as hell that like they so triggered, like you said earlier, MG. You was like, this is like the motherfucking the right and the left wing really agreeing with each other, but the right wing they'll say this is bullshit because there's no racism. Stop talking about race. And the left wing is saying this is bullshit. Stop talking. It's really class. But they come from the same anti-Black subconscious. You feel me? They real ego. Where the fuck we call that shit? That's deep in their soul. Like that's why they just like why? That shit funny as hell to see these motherfuckers cry. That shit funny. You can tell like, oh, these motherfuckers on some bullshit, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Mud, what you got?
Well, to your point about them tripping about them getting the money from like corporations and shit, if we are going to be pissed off about people's sources of money, when are we going to start having a conversation about people who have been enriched off of white supremacy?
Oh, that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point, Bud. Wow. That's an excellent point. Yeah, I mean, what do you say? Go ahead, Bud, continue.
No, I'm just saying, like, if we start talking to these motherfuckers about like their families and where their families got money from,
and where these corporations got money to pay her from, our exploitation, yeah, absolutely.
Money, and whether or not they should have that fucking money, they'll switch up their tone at that point. It'll be a completely different story.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all I got.
All right, Sam, let's ride.
Hey, this is MG from Reset Race. We're growing and so is our mission. Because of this, we're looking for volunteers to join our team. The skills we need most right now are researchers, video editors, and men and women to do voiceovers. If you're interested in helping out, go to actifypress.com/volunteer. Again, actifypress.com/volunteer. We hope to hear from you soon. Peace and justice from myself and the rest of the Reset Race crew.
Listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put it back on the grill again, we grilling them. Back on the grill again, we grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is what's at stake. You tuned in to Reset Race, you'll find out who really about justice and really who fake. Lineage go back to US Southern plantations, lineage, Jim Crow and mass incarceration, redlining lynchings. We are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG the wise one, cousin mother intellectual, Samantha bringing fire, anti-black, we pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. The backbone of the country, to win, you need our energy. You gon' see, listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake.
Until you do right by me, everything you think about is gonna crumble.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.